Okay, we are at time. I'd like to go ahead and get started with our next speaker. My name is Alan Lytle. I'm from Northrop Grumman, and I do have the pleasure of introducing our next speaker. Before I do want to thank the leadership and stakeholders for SENEDIA for this conference. It's brilliant. Thoroughly enjoy coming here, enjoy coming back to Newport. I learned to march into salute in Newport. I also learned to sail in Newport, so I always love coming back here. And then Admiral Mauger went through a lot of the things that we have learned through this conference, and I really appreciated that summary, but he missed a couple of things. I learned the best bakery in Newport. I also learned that my vertical leap is about average, so there you go. All right, so our speaker, Brigadier General David Trybula, is the Deputy Commanding General of the U.S. Army Combat Capabilities Development Command, otherwise known as DEVCOM. General Trybula leads DEVCOM's data and analytics domain and serves as key champion for DEVCOM's international and domestic partnerships that underpin the command's ability to innovate on behalf of the U.S. Army. He concurrently serves as Senior Commander of the U.S. Army Natick Soldier Systems Center. General Trybula has served at the tactical, operational, and strategic levels. His two combat tours include Operation Desert Storm in Iraq and Operation Enduring Freedom in Afghanistan. General Trybula's civilian education includes a bachelor's degree from the United States Military Academy and a master's degree and doctorate in economics from the University of Texas at Austin. So when I was introducing myself this morning to Dr. Trybula and General Trybula, I asked him how does he want to be introduced. He said short, so I failed, but he said remind everybody there's going to be a really good game on December 9th, and he said just introduce me as Dave. And so for everyone, here's Dave.
So good morning, everyone. It's truly a privilege to be with you this morning, and thank you for hanging around. And my guess is you're not hanging around for me, but you're hanging around for Dr. LaPlante, just like I am. But hopefully we can have a dialogue this morning. And really what I want to be able to do is tell you a little bit about what the Army's trying to do. And this is not what I would call a place where the Army normally connects. And I believe in what I call the collision of SMEmanship. And you can say, what is that? Well, SME, subject matter experts, okay? So SMEmanship is people that are subject matter experts and colliding not in a way that causes injury, but getting experts from different fields together is how we get innovation. And so what I'd ask you to think about as I walk through this morning, some of what we're doing in the Army and the path we're trying to take is what I will call a different use of dual purpose. And so what you're doing for maritime, does it have an application for the Army? And how can we connect? In my last slide, I'll give you exactly how you can connect with us. What I will tell you is my command doesn't buy. Okay? Army Futures Command is in the development, research developments, and we support the acquisition community, but we're not going to be the ones that do the big buys. We set things up and we work with our PEOs to do that. And so look, I am always told as a good soldier to start with a safety brief. And you say, what is he talking about? My jokes are horrible. It doesn't stop me from trying. And so we're going to start with a piece of trivia. All right. And I believe in interaction. Any guesses what this is? Texas. Well, it's almost as good as Texas. Okay. It's actually Natick Soldier Systems Center. And yes, the outline looks very much like Texas. It's a little bit smaller at 78 acres. Just a little bit smaller. And we'll come back to the Natick Soldier Systems Center in a little bit. Really, here is my roadmap on what we're going to talk about. And you say, well, what is that? And so that patch on the right-hand side is Army Futures Command. And it is the Army's newest four-star command. It was actually stood up this month 5 years ago. And so literally a brand new four-star command as far as that goes. And you can say, well, why do you have an anvil on there? Because we're designed to forge the future. Okay, and so that's really the logo of what AFC is. We'll talk a little bit about Army Futures Command. Inside of that is DEVCOM, as Alan pointed out very well, U.S. Army Combat Capabilities Development Command. And we had a huge fight over whether we were going to be called CCDC, which everybody thought they were getting invited to an AC/DC concert. Okay, and so we're really disappointed. But we've gone with DEVCOM. But what's missing in DEVCOM is the fact that our name actually has combat in it. And you can say, well, why do you have combat in the name? And that's so that our workforce doesn't lose sight of why we exist. And we are one of the few organizations that actually have combat as our first name. And that's the reason why. And then we'll get to Natick Soldier Systems Center. All right, so why AFC? And we're on our second commanding general, and he came in, and Army Futures Command was stood up to modernize the Army. And after he did his assessment, he said, we're not going to modernize the Army. And everybody's like, whoa, are we going to get rid of the command, the newest command? It's like, modernizing is focusing on the kit. Okay, what's the material piece? We have to transform. And that's why you see here the purpose of Army Futures Command is to transform the Army to ensure war-winning future readiness. And transforming includes not just the materiel, but how we integrate it across what in the Army we like to pronounce .mil PFP. Okay, so the holistic integrated solution to be able to do that. And that starts with a look at the future operating environment. And so we've done a really go back to basics. And a lot of folks say, okay, so you're looking at the threat. Well, the future operating event certainly includes what the threat is. And so we're threat informed. And you can see the threats up there that we're acutely paying attention to. But it's more than just what our adversaries are doing. It's the environment. It's what's happening geopolitically, economically, to the populations, and what's that going to affect in terms of where we're going to have to fight, how we're going to be able to get there, and those pieces moving forward. And to do that and take the future operating environment and look at how we're building the Army of 2030 and designing the Army of 2040, and you can say, well, do you really mean 2030 and 2040? Those are dates in the future. Okay, so don't lock in that except for near term and far term, is that circle in the middle. And one of the challenges is the second you write something down, odds are there's a different way of thinking about it. And so what I would submit to you is we have a circle in the center that talks about how we get there, and I'll walk through that, but it's really a web because the feedback mechanisms work throughout. And one of our biggest challenges is, what's the concept? How are we thinking about what we're going to do in the future and how we're going to fight in the future? And how are we doing that across all domains, ensuring that we're tied in with the other services, our allies, and even a bigger challenge than our allies is our partners. Okay, so when you think about connecting and leveraging everything that's out there, how do we do that in a way that moves forward? The Army's actually going to do something different than we've done probably in about 50 years. Our new operating concept is going to come out in draft next month, and we're going to take a year to really debate it and make it better. And so really looking forward to that coming out and being able to have those engagements over the next year, which then defines what we've got to do in terms of pulling us to the future. And of course, that defines what are our research objectives, and Futures Command does all of the research and development for the Army with the exception of construction, really. And so lots of efforts as far as that goes. And then how do we experiment to understand how things are going to work? I mean, one of our biggest challenges today is what are we going to do with autonomous entities, okay? And part of what General Rainey, the commander of AFC, has come in and said is, let's stop talking about, human-machine teaming, autonomous vehicles. Let's talk about how we're integrating soldiers and machines. All right? And what's the mission and what's the integration? And one of the challenges we have, which he has beaten down the bureaucracy to get past, is the best way to learn what we're going to do is get some of those machines in the hands of soldiers and start working with those missions in environments that are safe. And so that's still in Army Futures Command. And of course, that gives feedback to what research has got to be done, and it helps evolve the concept. Then the requirements community is inside of Futures Command. And so how do we define a requirement? And for those that aren't familiar, this is a proper noun in the joint community and frankly by statute. Okay, when we talk a big R requirement, it's a formal document that says here is what a service needs, and it's approved by the Joint Requirements Oversight Council. And so you can say, well, what's the big deal about having that document approved? Our folks that actually buy systems and kit from the Army can't buy it unless there's an actual approved requirement to be able to get after it. Lots of scar tissue on that, but I want folks to be able to understand that. So that's why it's really important. This isn't just a circle, it's a web, so that we can inform what the possibilities are when we define a requirement, so we don't set the bar at something that's infeasible, or we make it not include things that are going to really make a huge difference. And we can talk about particular examples as far as that goes. And all of that's to be able to get us to what does 2040 look like. And a huge effort in terms of being able to use real data, real analysis, modeling, and simulation to underpin all of those efforts. Okay. I'm an Army guy. Doing two things at once is hard, okay? So how do we do that? So we've got folks across the United States and internationally to really make sure we know what's going on. We're connected with the joint community and with the Army to be able to pull this forward. And we connect everywhere where we think we've got a stakeholder to be able to pull this forward. Do we have all the folks that we need? No, okay, that's 17,500. It's about half the size of the command because it doesn't include contractors, okay? It doesn't include the folks that we leverage, okay? And if we've got an agreement for support that's like a CRADA, a Cooperative Research and Development Agreement, it's not going to include the folks that are working on those efforts. And so it's a lot bigger than that, so we can get after what the efforts are. And so where are we going? So it's really easy to say, hey, well, you want 2040, what does that really mean? Well, where we are kind of sets part of what we've got to do to get to where we're going. So right now, we rotate forces. To meet a mission, we're going to rotate units to be able to do that. And we do that basically at the brigade combat team level. So our organization is generally about 6,000, could be less than 4,000, could be over 8,000. But that is our independent unit of action right now. And we do that using really a lot of industrial age systems and processes to be able to move things forward. And when we think about how do we actually put effects downrange, it's really asynchronous, and it's really one domain as opposed to integrated across everything. And of course, that limits what we're able to do and be able to move forward to. And so based on that, okay? We know that we've got to change the way we're doing things. And in the short term, we've got to shift to a world that needs deterrence. And you've heard folks talk about why we need deterrence, but that's something that we have really not thought about until recently, since the wall came down in 1989. Okay, so really a lot of folks are saying new discipline. There are very few schools where you used to be able to get, I think, a degree in deterrence. It's hard to even find a class. And so how do we do that? And how do we think about deterrence from not just a joint force, but from an Army perspective? We're moving the independent units of action from the brigade up to the division or the corps. And so from being at the colonel level to being at the 2 or the 3-star level, where we expect a bigger staff to be able to integrate many more effects and actually tap into national assets and tap in inherently to the joint community to have a way of integrating coalition, allies, and partners. And so that is fundamentally a different way of doing business, and it takes a different level of experience as well as a whole different set of command and control mechanisms to be able to do that. Leveraging data to converge effects, that's what we say. Really what we need to do is leverage information as we move forward based on data. One of our biggest problems in the joint force is anti-access aerial denial. And so how do we challenge that and break through that to be able to move forward? And of course, moving forward to 2040, we want to make sure that we're enhancing our overmatch against our adversaries, which includes a recognition that we got to be able to adapt, because whatever we think we need, any solution we have, our adversary is going to adapt to it, so we need to be able to change and be able to get after that. All right. And so inside of Futures Command, trying to work that, DevCom is the organization that does the non-medical research and development for the command. We've got a separate organization that does the medical research. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about the research and development piece, for which I'm the deputy of. And so you can say, well, what is it that you're looking at? And why should we care? Well, DevCom inside of Futures Command is a $13 billion a year enterprise. $4 billion of that is research and development. $9 billion is life cycle engineering. Support the program executive offices and our life cycle commands, maintaining and improving the current fleet. To do that, we're actually organized where we have what industry would call 8 P&Ls, okay? And of those 8, 6 of them are functional centers. So armaments, kind of self-explanatory. In armaments, not only are we developing what the munitions are and the projectiles, as well as the cannons to deliver those projectiles, we actually run an armaments university. I mean, who wants a degree in how to blow stuff up? Okay, with the place to go blow stuff up. Okay, chemical biological center, I think self-explanatory, and really pushing the edge on what we need to be able to do. A C5 ISR, so command control, communications, cyber, and then the whole ISR suite, aviation and missile center, and it does what its name describes. And then the last 2 that are functionally focused are our ground vehicle system center and our soldier center. And as we have emerging technologies that cut across these, we try and find where is a single focal point to make sure that our efforts are at least informed as we're moving the research forward. And so for robotics, it's the Ground Vehicle System Center that's our integrator across that. And when we talk about unmanned aerial systems, it's Aviation and Missile Center that's bringing that together. And then in addition to those 6, okay? And the smallest of those is about 1,500 people and $300 million a year. The largest is, I think, $3 billion a year and several thousand folks. But supporting that, we've got the Army Research Laboratory and the DevCom Analysis Center. And both of them provide the Army's foundation for different things. So for ARL, it's foundational research and connecting with with universities across the country in terms of what is the next science that we can do, and then starting to apply that. And the DevCom Analysis Center is the foundational analysis that underpins essentially every Army programmatic and force structure decision moving forward. This chart does a crosswalk between those centers and what the Army's priorities are, whether it's a priority in terms of what we're trying to put in the field, what the gap is that we're trying to close, or it's what is the research priority that we've been given from the Army or OSD. And again, lots of places where folks are doing work across multiple centers, and where that's the case, we obviously in green have a lead identified. And to do that, we've got a small workforce. It's actually just over 27,000 folks. And you say, well, why does it say 14,000? Because we count those that are on our payroll separate from the contractors that support us. But it's a team and a huge team. And so of that 27,000 folks, there's less than 200 military. And so absolutely, okay, I saw some looks out there. And so when you think about an organization and how you're able to drive that forward, the places that we put military, we've got to actually leverage the rest of the Army and the joint community to make sure that we get that user feedback, because that's who we've got to be able to answer to moving forward. And when you look at the degrees, they range from aerospace to zoology and everything in between. Stuff that I've never heard of, okay, and truly impressive folks. So lots of PhDs, lots of patents. At the Army Research Office inside of ARL, which does the tie for basic research with our communities. They actually have a hallway that has the Nobel laureates who have done work for the Army. That's not to say their work to get the Nobel Prize, okay, but I think there's 20 different Nobel laureates on that wall. And so when you talk about what we're able to connect into, it's absolutely incredible. And what y'all do is incredible. And so being able to connect again, that collision of seamanship, I think is hugely important. And more important than the patents are the advances that we're able to make. And there are a plethora of advances in the hands of soldiers and frankly sailors, airmen, Marines, Guardians, and Coast Guardsmen that have come from the work that DevCom and our predecessor organizations have done, with many more in the pipeline. And so Natick Soldier System Center. So little known fact, and you say, well, Trybula, why are you here today? So I am the only active duty general officer, Army general officer assigned to New England. Okay? And if you want to go a little bit farther, east of the Hudson. Okay? And so this is part of what I would call my ecosystem in my region in making sure that we're able to connect, because I believe there is so much that's been discovered that just hasn't found all the applications for it that are going to be meaningful for our warfighters. And so that's why it's really important that I'm here today. Natick was the brainchild of Major General Dorio, who envisioned one location for the coordination of all research work done in the nation, really for what we now call human performance. Okay, and so that was the vision of Natick. That is not today at Natick Soldier System Center in the picture, okay? But where it says soldiers are credentials, the statue as you come in the installation is that statue. And you'd say, well, why is that there? In World War II, as the 8th Infantry Division broke out of Normandy and had surrounded a German corps, the 1 star was going to take the surrender from the German lieutenant general. And he's been fighting without a shower, okay, and just living in as an infantryman does for weeks in the hedgerows, okay, around Normandy. And so he looks grungy. He comes in, and the German lieutenant general looks at him. He's like, who's this guy I'm going to surrender to? He goes, where are your credentials? And the general turns behind him to the 3 soldiers behind him. He goes, these are my credentials. Okay, and so just like combat in Combat Capabilities Development Command is a reminder, okay, for our whole workforce at DevCom, down a level inside a Natick Soldier System Center, this statue is a reminder every day of why the center exists. And since its inception in 1954, it is truly a joint enterprise. And anything that the Army, Navy, Air Force, Marine Corps, and Guardians, and to a lesser extent the Coast Guard, eats, okay, is designed at the joint food facility at Natick. And that may make me a lot of unfriends, okay? Because yes, MREs come from there. The toothpaste food, okay, you can say, well, what are you talking about? The food that's actually put in toothpaste tubes for U-2 pilots, okay, is actually manufactured there. And then all the recipes for shipboard and all the dining facilities come from there. Additionally, we have most of what all of the services wear, okay, not all of it, but we have textile representation and offices from the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, and the Coast Guard resident on the installation and leveraging the testing, expensive testing facilities so that we don't have to buy multiples for the different services. And so, yes, you can blame us for all the different uniforms, and they get to do some really cool stuff, like the Navy's redesigning the uniforms for the folks assigned to the USS Constitution, because they are in Revolutionary War garb, okay? Wouldn't it be great if it didn't have to feel like Revolutionary War garb? and so they're updating a lot of things as far as that goes and being able to pull that forward. And so the other thing is, if you carry it, okay, other than weapons, then certainly for the Army and to a large part for the Marine Corps and Special Operations community, the research is being done and the development is being managed at Natick Soldier System Center. And to do that, we've also got a medical research command, who's focused on human performance, which includes everything from nutrition to also, I mean, there's 2 patents that are pending this month from the research that they've done. One that can actually identify a heat injury from tracking a person's gait, okay, before it happens to, I think they're at the 98% level in terms of that. And being able to, they've got a tool that we expect a patent to be approved for to do enhance the ability to do triage and mass casualty events. And so really a broad gamut of what we do on Natick Soldier System Center, and just want folks to know that we're there. We're just up the road. I mean, depending on traffic, depends on whether it's, an hour and a half or it's 3 hours, okay? But we all know that. And so this slide is illustrative when I talk about the huge ecosystem that is New England. Do I have many of you on here? Yes, I've got many of you on here. Am I missing more than I have on here? Absolutely, okay? And that's not meant, this wasn't designed for here. This is a slide I've been using for over a year. It's to talk to what does this region bring from the Army's perspective, and it's missing the whole maritime piece, which is how do we leverage that when we pull this forward? And so what I'm looking for is how do I create the synergies from this community to be able to leverage it moving forward? And so given that we're in research and development, normally it's agreements, okay, that lead to the developments. Lots of different ways we can partner, and I've got a one-stop shop for all of DevCom that kind of is the focal point, the clearinghouse. And my guess is one of those centers may jump out as, hey, I think we really fit here. We've got something. But my guess is you probably have 2 or 3. And with that, I hope that I helped you understand a little bit of where the Army's trying to go, that you see yourself potentially as part of that roadmap to the future, and look forward to your questions and then working together in the future.
General, and thank you for your remarks. I was just curious, surely this is the case, and to the extent you can talk about it, how our thinking of the future has been influenced by what's going on in Ukraine, and what lessons we're learning, if you can talk about them.
Yeah, so that I think the impacts of Ukraine are multifold. Some of which we can talk about, some of which we can't. I mean, it goes everything from the discussion of, do we need deterrence in the ground domain, or is it just something that we're looking at a much higher level? And I think we've seen that we got to figure that out differently, and we're going to have to figure out how we can impact the psyche and the decision-making process of potential adversaries. I think we have fundamentally changed how we think about information sharing and what that means, and recognize that our tools for being able to do that aren't as deep or broad as what we would like. I think that the Army got away from really thinking across all domains, and forgetting that electronic warfare matters. I mean, when you're fighting in Iraq and Afghanistan, the threat's very different, and so I think for the Army, that foot stomp, something we knew. And just is causing us to really figure out how we incorporate that moving forward more. Logistics, I think we had 8 focused teams that we called cross-functional teams, looking at how do we close Army priority gaps. We now have 9. That 9th one is the contested logistics cross-functional team. Based on the challenges that we've seen on both sides, in recognition of what that means, not just in Europe, but what it means in the Indo-Pacific. The autonomy, I mean, the number of systems in the use of unmanned aerial systems, and it is different than where we are today, and we recognize that we've got to do that going both ways. And so how do we understand and think about what we're going to do on a battlefield that is transparent? Okay, if I recognize that I'm not going to be able to do much, if anything, that isn't seen, how do I think about what that means? And so how do I deny the ability to actually comprehend what we're doing on a transparent battlefield to our adversaries, and at the same time do the reverse in terms of enabling that transparent battlefield? But we haven't thought much about it. Thank you.
Good morning. One question I have for you is an opportunity for many small businesses in particular to get engaged with you. How do you buy spares? You know, in the Navy, we do Navy supply and DLA. Is there an Army sup, just like there's a NAV sup?
Yeah, I'm not 100% understanding the question. So what part, I mean, is it somebody that feeds into DLA?
Well, yes, I was just wondering how small business could get on a bidder's list for your logistics support, and whether that's through the Defense Logistics Agency or whether there is an Army Logistics Agency that they would get on, similarly for commodities or things like batteries and whatnot. I assume you certify batteries that soldiers would carry and use.
Yes. So absolutely. Inside, really two things. One is inside our Army Materiel Command is the focus of being able to provide logistics. And so I would say the connection down in Huntsville at Redstone Arsenal with Army Materiel Command and their subordinate organizations, as well as our program executive offices. And so batteries, I don't remember which one of our PEOs, but I think it's under PEO soldier that batteries fall, and so that would be the place to be able to connect, and you can shoot me a note, and we'll get you connected as far as that goes to get on those lists.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Good morning. From all your years in service, what advancements in technology have impressed you the most? And have you seen any of them carry forward and morph into even newer, better versions of that?
That's a great question, Liz. Thanks. Yeah, so look, what I would say is impressed me the most actually isn't a technological advancement. It is the ingenuity of our soldiers, sailors, Marines, airmen. Haven't had a lot of interactions with Guardians, but I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt, and Coast Guardsmen. What our folks are able to do to solve the problem today is absolutely incredible. When I think about what's showing promise for the future, I'm actually privileged to have an additional duty as one of the Army's principals on what's called the Joint Defense Manufacturing Council. And as such, I have a role of doing formal reviews of the 9 public-private partnerships that DOD is invested in that we call the National Manufacturing Innovation Institutes. And I think they're pushing science and manufacturing in areas that are just absolutely astounding. And so when I think of what technology is um, is not science fiction, okay? So I think we all understand what science fiction is, but you can have science proven, it can still be engineering fiction. And you got manufacturing fiction after you solve the engineering problem. And then you've got the fiction of whether or not somebody wants. And so when I look across what's out there and the promise, I see things like there's a computer that's actually been pulled on a single thread, okay? And so when you think about that, whether that's, the sensors, the battery, and the computer is what you wear, okay, or it's part of any fiber that's on the systems, whether it's synthetic biology and the ability to actually, I would say, grow whatever we need, okay, understanding that synthetic biology is not alchemy, but what it's able to rearrange is pretty daunting as far as that goes, and has, whether it's alternative ways to produce things, so you can now get nylon, okay, without using oil, okay, which you couldn't do before. You name it, okay, in terms of what's possible. The question is how do we push the edge as far as that goes. The ability to communicate. I mean, I think that the vastness is actually incredibly amazing, and part of it is what are we going to choose to pull forward. And when we look at 3D printing, one of the things that we've got folks working on at Natick is 3D printing food. And you say, well, why do I want to 3D print food? Well, I can calibrate the nutrients to what you need, Liz, okay, separate from what you need, Alan, okay, and adjust it based on what you need right now. Like, can we do that at scale? Of course not. Okay, but those sorts of things are what's on the edge. Of course, it's not what you asked. Okay, it's what I wanted to answer in terms of most impactful. Probably the advances that allowed us to fight 20 years of war with the few casualties that we had. So everything across being able to bring the effects from all the services down to the squad level for the squad in contact, and being able to bring in bombers and fighters to be able to help out, as well as the evacuation and the medical advances are actually, that's what I would point to in terms of what we've done. Okay. Awesome. Thank you. Is it time?
Sure. One more question. Sir, thank you for being here. I spent a lot of time at Naval Surface Warfare Center, Indian Head, Maryland, where they make explosives, design new explosives, blow stuff up. That lab had a very good connection with Army counterparts at Picatinny and also Aberdeen. I spent a lot of time at Picatinny and Aberdeen as well. I'm just wondering, has there ever been a crosswalk between the Army R&D infrastructure and the Navy R&D infrastructure and labs to see who matches up to what? I mean, Natick is pretty unique. I'm not sure what Navy laboratory that would match up to, but just curious if that's ever been done.
So let me answer that in two parts. I don't know if the crosswalk's ever been done. What I do know is that the Air Force, Navy, Army, and Coast Guard, the directors of our research enterprises, so ONR, AFRL, I'm not sure what the Coast Guard calls theirs from Groton, and then DEVCOM for the Army actually meet quarterly. And for the first time in probably 5 years, really largely, I think, because of COVID, and finally coming out of COVID, the last quarterly meeting was in person. And so, again, that's not a crosswalk, that's crosstalk at one of our facilities, actually putting hands on and talking to researchers doing what one of us is doing and being able to have that talk. So I think there's a piece of that that is going on. What I would say is there are other things that are going on that I think we need to recognize. And the one that jumps to mind is we have created a DOD, actually Army, but we've opened it up, and it's become a DOD community of practice for advanced manufacturing. And so we get together 2 to 3 times a year, and we cross-level who has what equipment and processes and is working with what technologies across all the services, okay? And I had one meeting where FDA actually showed up, which was interesting, okay? And so we're open as broad as we can, having that cross-government conversation about who's doing what with what are the technologies that are coming out, and making sure that we don't have multiple folks buying something to test it so that we can leverage it going across. And so again, I don't know that there's been that full crosswalk, but there certainly is, I'd say, functionally related looking at it, and then at the flag level, making sure that we're coming together so that we can have those conversations. Yeah. Thank you, everybody.